Fix that.
The 20s are just barely.
He did, he ordered another pair.
I know. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and open up our special city council meeting of February 4th. Second item on the agenda is all Tenny. Or, Leroy, you can start. I'm sorry, Leroy.
That's okay. What we got is in front of you. We tried to do a template with the industrial park I showed you the other night. Tenny is now trying to use that template for all of his projects. And that's in front of you. And Tenny and I will be going back and forth. The first project to talk about, percent of the grants you get are a reimbursement grant. So you spend the money and then you put in, you get reimbursed.
Right.
So, but normally that reimbursement, the lag time is very small. And if they're big projects, you might put in for reimbursement as you make progress. Now, this one's small enough, we may not do that, but on some of the larger ones, you might do 2 or 3 draws. But you never get the money up front. You always spend it and stuff. We will finish this year, so we will be eligible to apply for another CDBG grant next December of this year. So I guess question city council, you know, is getting roughly 36% of the project paid for. We've got to continue to improve our water lines and valves. Do we want to pursue another CDBG grant this fall?
That's a rhetorical question.
Normally it would be, but with the group we're working
I
with.
think absolutely, of course.
Okay. Now, bear in mind, to be eligible, you have to have the engineering design done before you submit the application. So I know you all love see, well, that's part of the process. You can't, if you don't have it ready to go to construction when you apply, they'll just kick your application out. So this fall, we will be doing the engineering design of it. You even have to get the permit for the project from DEQ before you apply for the grant. The other thing, you'll notice we've used the same auditor because most cities, their budget ends on June 30th. So for them to have their audit done in time to apply for this grant, it's not as challenging, whereas our budget ends on September 30th. We have to have our audit done before they award these grants. So our turnaround time on our audit's very short. The auditor that we've been using the last couple of years has been very diligent about getting our audit done timely so we can be eligible for this. And that's part of why we recommend to use the same auditor again this year.
I think it's a prime scenario to be able to put the engineering out to bid and see who comes in lowest on a deal like that, especially when we're doing grants and stuff.
State law does not allow you to bid engineering.
Really?
The way you select engineers in the state of Oklahoma by state law is you go through an RFP process.
Well, right. Same deal.
And no,
Close.
it's not bidding.
No, I get it.
You get proposals.
Right.
And then you look at their qualifications and you pick the most qualified firm. So if you get 5 applicants, you pick the most qualified. Then you negotiate only with the most qualified. And if you sign a contract with them, you don't even know what the other 4 might do it for. But if you negotiate with them and you think it's a reasonable amount, then you pick that firm and sign it with them.
See, that's a fallacy if I ever heard one in my entire life.
That's state law. And it's been state law for probably, it wasn't, when I was here in the 80s, it was not state law, so it probably was adopted in the 90s. So yeah, you can't bid engineering. Now you can select a different engineer and negotiate with that engineer, but you can't get it.
Still don't have bid.
How much engineering on this one?
50.
On this one, 42,000 for the engineering fees, the staking 7,500, and then inspection 16,200. So 65,000 total.
Well, you could sure use multiple engineers, couldn't you?
Sure.
And therefore, when we do bigger projects, I would think that the engineer that wants it the most is gonna come in with a pretty low price. So there's ways around this whole state law thing.
Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to take in consideration. Say if we get these small CDBG grants over the next 15 years, do we want 7 or 15 engineers working on our water system when, you know, you've got an engineering firm that knows the system and is planning ahead, or do you want to bring in somebody new, and then if there's a foul-up, normally what happens is they blame it on the last project and the last engineer. So
Catch-22.
change engineers a lot is not always a good thing.
Yeah.
Because they have local knowledge of your system, they have all the maps. So one engineer's not going to give another engineer all the maps they have of the town.
Haven't we paid for those maps?
Some of that knowledge, yes, some of the knowledge is intrinsic to the engineer that would not be something that we would get. We can't scan his brain. But yes, some of it we would have.
So we currently negotiate with Myers on a project-by-project basis, or we just go with whatever they say?
They submit a task. The city of Guthrie, and I don't have it in front of me, but it seems like in 2016, about every 5 years, the city of Guthrie renews a service agreement with Myers Engineering. And then on each project, they submit a task order. If the task order is over 25,000, it comes to city council. If it's under 25, then it can be approved administratively. Most of our bigger projects, as you can see, are going to be over 25. So you all see all of the larger task orders that they get approved. So each project has a task order. Okay.
So the answer is no, we don't.
No,
Negotiate with them on a case-by-case basis.
They submit a proposal.
But we don't negotiate with them on that, because I don't,
No.
I mean, we should probably, but that would be council if it's over 25 grand, I guess.
Correct.
So we have to keep that in check.
The next item is when we had the major flood event, and if you remember, I just put on here the location of our raw water intake on Cottonwood Creek. And for some of the newer council members, there is a weir here. I think I may be using the right term. But a deep cell that has water year round. Rather than build a dam, we just protected that so it wouldn't wash out. And that gives us year-round water supply from Cottonwood Creek. There was a lot of silt that built up during the flood, and so we will be getting FEMA funds to clean out all that silt.
Nice.
To continue to protect that area. And Tinny, I don't know if that one is 80-20 or...
It is an 80-20.
So they'll pay 80%, we pay 20.
Right. But they get that up front, or we gotta do the work first and then submit
Again,
for it?
we pay for it.
Reimbursement.
Now, the problem is, with all of the FEMA projects, there's a tremendous lag time.
Yeah.
It could be
Year.
9 months,
Yeah.
a year, before you get reimbursed. Now, what most cities would do is they would use their stabilization money. We got $1 million of stabilization money in the general fund, and just under $1 million in the Guthrie Public Works Authority. We would use those funds, and then when we got reimbursed, we would put that money back into the stabilization so that we don't have to borrow it or cut other projects short. But there is a significant lag time.
But it's worth it.
Yes. Tenny, do you have anything you want to add on to this project?
Just to add to this project, we haven't got an actual cost estimate on this project yet. Myers is working on it. We've got roughly close to 5 feet of silt in some of the areas that will need to be cleaned off. There's an approximate, I think they've determined close to 2,834 cubic yards of silt over the entire project that would have to be removed. So some of the things that Myers is doing on this project, they've already went out and they've, of course, already had the original grades from the project when it was constructed, so they were able to real quickly be able to determine what elevations have changed from the silt. Some of the silt we'll look at probably leaving on site because of the riprap served as what its purpose was for, is to prevent erosion, maybe actually grab a hold of some material, which it's done. Mainly what we'll be looking at doing is coming in and clearing off just the roadways down to the 2 points of clean out.
How far back will you, to the west where you go on the clean out? You gonna go so many feet back to the west on there, or do you know?
All FEMA will allow us to do is just the initial road portion coming up on the west right there, and the road portion on the east.
Okay.
So is it just the road we're cleaning out, or are we cleaning out the whole?
No, all we're doing is cleaning off the silt that's gathered on the road that accesses down to it. The actual creek line, there's no damage to
The
it.
silt came from the flood.
Yes. Actually came from upstream where the new bridge was constructed across Broadway. There's some major erosion going on up there where the water's coming through that new bridge,
Okay.
and the silt and settlement's settling off down in lower stream.
And there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with these that Tenny gets to do. The next one is Fourth and Water damage or drainage culvert. And looked at two options. Option number 2 was the most cost-effective, so I didn't put option number 1 on there. And Tenny, if you want to explain that project.
So again, this is another FEMA project. And the way these, to kind of walk you through the way these work, right after a flood, we go through, we evaluate any damage that we might find throughout the city that's ours. Then we'll schedule a meeting with FEMA. They send up a guy, we meet with them. They do a damage inventory report, and it's very important to make sure anything that is in that area of damage is on that report, because that's kind of how your funds are based off of for that specific project. So what this area is, at 4th and Warner, we've got a storm drain that runs down Warner to the Cottonwood Creek. At 4th Street, there was a collapse in the infrastructure. That existing pipe is about 30 foot deep right there.
Over here, huh?
So, yeah, I can show this. Right here in this intersection, it's about 30 foot deep, our existing line is, and it's
Why is it so deep?
long before my time.
The railroad track.
But what we've looked at which was option 1, initially, FEMA requests us to do point repair only. What's that cost? So again, we've had to involve Myers in this project. They went in, they've determined and put together an estimate. What's it going to cost to expose this pipe 30 foot deep, safely, shore it back. Again, right next to the creek, you're fighting water. The water tables, you're fighting it. So costs go up on the project. And I believe option 1 ended up coming to close to a little over $500,000 to do a simple point repair. So we looked at other options. We went to what they call mitigation plan in the FEMA process, and we decided to go with coming a block back where we're approximately 4 foot deep at 5th and Warner, dropping a new manhole in, extending a block of pipe down, 580 feet of pipe to just past 4th Street, and then turning it into a flume, just like what ODOT did with the project when they put the viaduct in. That project comes in at $261,631. Again, a lot of engineering had to be done prior to, and then there'll also be engineering that comes along with it once the project is bid and staking and everything. But that was where we came with option 1 and option 2.
But they'll do this, FEMA will do an 80%
Yes, we've been
on that
approved
deal?
for this project through FEMA.
And it's 80/20.
It's an 80/20.
And I might point out, our initial response to the flooding, we got reimbursed for our overtime and manpower. We've already paid that. That reimbursement that we got from FEMA for that, we've set aside to help pay for the 20% local, because we've already paid for that labor. Once we use that money up, the 20% that's our share, we won't take out of the stabilization fund, since we won't get that back. That 20% we'll take out of CIP. Only that 80% that we'll get reimbursed would we take out of the stabilization, because it will have a source to put it back.
Well, it makes sense to get rid of that 30-foot deep pipe anyway, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
5
I mean,
feet
why
at
would-
5th to 30 feet at 4th?
That's crazy.
With us setting a new manhole, bringing them 4 inlets on the corner inlets right there into that new manhole, we're able to come out with a
But currently it goes from 5 feet to 30 feet.
dropping into the Cottonwood Creek, yes.
In a block, that's why.
Wow. Maybe that's why they did it, because that's where the runoff goes, I guess. Get it out of there faster. I don't know how much faster it's gonna
Good
go.
gravity going.
You're still gonna be at a slope to get it out of there anyway, right?
Yes. And I'll touch a little bit on what Leroy was talking about with we've already submitted 3 categories to FEMA, and the paperwork and everything's done on that, and Kim should be seeing close to $50,000 coming in from FEMA, and that's what Leroy was talking about. All of our emergency response, that manning barricades, the initial setup of barricades and stuff like that. That's some of the funds that Leroy was talking about.
The next one on the list to talk about is 4th and Warner, Seward Road.
Where?
Seward.
Penny, you want to talk about that?
What this one is, again, this happened in the May rains during the flood. We lost an end section off of one of our culverts out off of Seward Road between Sooner and Coltrane. The end section, this is just a picture of the outlet. The end section that came off of that and the 2 wing walls is further down in that ravine. But besides going through FEMA, this is kind of like our Pine Street, with it being on Seward Road. If you guys recall, with the classification, the functional classifications of the roads, some of the roads do not qualify for FEMA funds. That's when we learned about the Oklahoma Emergency Management Relief Fund through ODOT. We met with an ODOT representative. Again, went through pretty much the exact same process. We had to fill out a damaged inventory report. Again, the representative was on site, myself was on site. Added everything, measurements, dimensions of the damage. They put together an estimate. Our engineer has to put together an estimate, and we go from there with it. This specific project, we have not received our approval on yet. ODOT sends you an actual approval. You get a DDI number that goes along with the project. We haven't received the number for this project yet. We've put Myers on hold. No more, there'd be no further action until we get our actual DDI number approving us for reimbursement on this
Is that
project.
an 80/20 as well?
It's an 80/20 as well. With this fund, any emergency repairs that are done are 100%. So when we get to the Pine project, where we extended that out and put in a temporary culvert, we've already received 100% reimbursement back on that portion of that project.
But that's not the total of the project. And the next one we're going to talk about is Pine Street, so Tim, you go to that one.
So again, it's the same project, same funding source. This one is the one. We did do some emergency repair to this project. It was just under $8,000, I believe, worth of emergency repairs. Where we're at right now, we have received our DDI. We do have a number with this one. Plans are being put together for this project. We're with widening that section of road right through there. We're looking into possibly having to acquire some additional easement and right-of-way on this project. We're looking at putting in an 84-inch culvert with new wing walls on both sides and new guardrail.
How many culverts are there now? Is there one or two?
There's currently just one,
One, okay.
and we'll replace it with
great
one.
big
A hydraulic, Myers Engineering, they had to produce a hydrology study for this. Again, part of the grant, it's required to produce a hydrology study. So
We got a number, that's the good news.
we have been approved for that one.
And it'll be the same kind of guardrail when you go back.
Yes.
And that's the cost estimate on it. And our share is 140.
146,718.
Okay, so that's all of the response to the flood. And the next one, won't spend a lot of time on it, Coltrane.
Yes, this is, again, same funding source. It is part of the flood. It happened in the May rains. With it being on Coltrane, it falls underneath the ODOT, Oklahoma Emergency Management Relief Fund. We're going to do this one in-house. The water crossed that section of Coltrane right there, going in, feeding into Guthrie Lake.
Right.
It washed that curb line down. We'll be ripping all that out. We have been approved for this one. We do have a DDI number for this project. I think it's just over $10,000 is what we've been approved for this project.
Are you gonna put a new culvert on that one, or you, because you know, the water's over on that side, over on the south side is higher than what's on the lake side.
Yeah, no new culvert will be put in.
Okay.
Only thing we'll be doing there is addressing the damaged
So,
curb,
okay.
curb and gutter down along that curve right there.
Next one to talk about is the mineral wells project and progress report on that. Of course, the city council has already awarded all the contracts for the project. And as you can see with input from the landscape architect, all of the trees in this area, there's no development there. To save those trees, we moved the parking that was along here where people park now. We're leaving it alone and we're moving that parking over there. So we ended up with roughly the same number of spots that we'd originally planned. This, of course, is the playground, and these are the 3 picnic shelters. They come in kits. We did not award the bid on those because they bid them with a wood floor, and due to flooding and stuff, we wanted a concrete base for them to set on. So we will do those 3 ourselves. We'll put it out for bids for the kits to construct them, and then we'll just put the kits together. And then, of course, here's the splash pad. And we are making some changes to this road based on input from the landscape architect. That was a confusing area, and it will be simplified when we get done. The grant's $437,500, and ours originally was 50-50, but with some of the additional improvements, we're at $529, and that's CIP money. Originally, we had budgeted $100,000 for 5 shelters, so that number might come down some. And then some of the things like benches and stuff like that, originally, one source we get them from was out of production, And now that they're back in production, we may get to lower those prices as well. The playground equipment is the splash pad equipment is the same equipment that, and same location that was in the original grant application. The playground, again, is the same equipment that was in the original grant application. So that never changed, the location of the playground equipment or the splash pad. We got different color options for these. We went to the Historic Preservation Commission. If you look at, there's probably 15 to 20 different color combinations. Probably 15 of those, or a lot of them, match the color palette that's been approved for the historic district. And last night, the HPC was unable to select colors. And if you look at section 10, on work required review by the city and the historic preservation ordinance, applications to apply or remove paint may be approved by staff as an administrative approval. We give an opportunity to HPC, since they didn't pick the colors, staff will pick the colors, and we have selected earth tone colors to complement the natural and historic setting of the park.
Which is what it should be, probably.
Yeah. We will use white and off-white on the pavilions, and that's kind of a prototype of what the pavilions look like. And you can see that historically, there's been pavilions adjacent and around the large pavilion. We are in the process of scraping this and the large pavilion, and we will use the same paint on that to match these so that they will look the same. Next project is the streetscape project. That one's been going on for a long time. Before I arrived, this, of course, is the historic landmark district. So the majority of the project area in red is within that historic landmark district. So there's opportunity for input under the section of 106 review by both SHPO and the National Park Service. The original plan called for curb extensions or bump outs that would cross both Oklahoma, here and here, and then cross Division, and that would be true at Oklahoma and Harrison. And then I think there were about 9 trees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 trees proposed. We worked on an alternate, trying to protect the historic view shed, both Oklahoma and Harrison, where there were no curb extensions that extended out on either of those streets. They just extended across the Division. That was rejected, and we reduced the number of trees from 9 to 5, and that was rejected by SHPO. And we got a meeting on February 12th with ODOT, our architect, and city staff to talk about alternates that we might propose on this project to move it forward. So we'll be coming to the city council with some ideals that maybe would allow us to do this project and still achieve the objectives of the original project if possible.
So the bump outs have been discussed for 5 years. Got nixed.
Correct.
Does SHPO provide any alternatives, like what they would approve, or they just say no trees, no bump outs, and that's all you get?
ODOT visited with SHPO, and SHPO indicated, well, why don't you come up with some alternates to the curb extensions? And ODOT said, well, what are you thinking of if you're thinking of alternates in lieu of the curb extensions? And they said, well, we don't know. And so they said, your architect should know. And so that's why we're meeting with ODOT and the architect to see if we can think of something that would serve a similar purpose.
Hell, that money's been sitting there so long, it ought to be about $1 million by now, right?
Yeah, we earn a lot of interest. Again, some of the advantages, I know we think that from a pedestrian standpoint, safety is a key element for the curb extensions or bump outs across the division. But even if we don't get to do those, these two intersections go back far enough to cover all the loops for our street lighting, which is very brittle, needs to be replaced. So that's an advantage to get that done. And also we've added the permissive turn signals at both of these intersections. So even if we don't get the curb extensions, there is some benefit to the project. It's interesting, a lot of these places, we already have curb extensions, they're just painted on the ground. Of course, people just drive over the paint, but they're already there. And again, the monies that we have set aside for this is just under $400,000. Some of it is from the concert that was had here a number of years ago, and other funding that we, CIP money.
And we're trying to get SHPO's permission because we're using ODOT money?
Anytime we use federal dollars, or anybody uses federal dollars, it's called a Section 106 review, and even if it's outside of the historic district, for example, the bridge, that was outside of the historic district. But because it's federal funds, it goes to SHPO, it goes to the Archaeological Society. That's just part of, they used to call it an 895 review many years ago, but now they call it the Section 106. So those entities, of course, when you're in a historic district, in our case a landmark historic district, then it is even more restrictive. But SHPO could come back and have adverse comments on a project that's not even in the historic district. I read the review for the bridge, the viaduct, and I mean, they went through meetings and meetings and meetings with SHPO to get that approved. And it seems to be more difficult. There seems to be a swing in thought process, and I know a lot of ODOT's projects, not just here, but in other places, have been slowed down as a result of the new thought process. And I know people applying for historic tax credits are finding difficulties right now getting their projects approved by SHPO. It's anytime you use federal funds. If we were using 100% local funds, SHPO would have no input. And that's what Ardmore did. The pieces that Ardmore wanted to do, their local historic district endorsed it, and what they did was they took the federal money and moved it outside of the historic district and did their streetscape outside of the historic district and did things that SHPO wouldn't object to. Inside the historic district, they did a roundabout, curb extensions. They were in a position they paid for it with 100% local money. SHPO could not stop that or have input on it.
So on the 300 and some thousand we're paying, how much of that was the concert money? Like 160 or 200,000 of it?
Kim, do you remember?
We have 168,000 set aside from that concert money.
So the rest is CIP. Do we have a CIP expended? How much have we spent on CIP? Total.
Brian, I don't.
You don't have to answer right now. It's something I would like to have the answer to.
And Kim did a
I
report
thought you
on
just sent that out.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
I think Jim asked for it, and
We'll
that was sent to everybody.
Might have been, I didn't
Last
know.
week or maybe last week, I think.
We'll send it out.
It was Reese
Did I
Jones.
get it?
Really?
I don't think I got it
It
either.
was something that Jim asked for.
It may have been before you got back.
Oh, okay.
I may have just,
Maybe.
And we go through every one of these same agencies with all the FEMA projects. I mean, all of those projects, majority of those projects are outside of the historic district, but we have to go through the archaeological group, we have to go through the environmental group and the SHPO side of things. We meet with all of them agencies prior to us receiving and getting okayed for any of them funds as well.
The next one is Harrison Street Bridge. And when we reviewed that, we decided to submit an application to ACOG for STBG funding for the project that's in yellow along Oklahoma that includes some street work and the stormwater improvements, the connection between Wentz, along Wentz between Harrison and Oklahoma was not eligible for federal funding, so that would have been 100% local. And then along Harrison, which would include taking the bridge out and putting the road there in place of the bridge, was our ACOG 2 application. And these we more or less, because of cost, nixed these, but we wanted to make sure that we presented it because it will have some impact on when we enhance the stormwater drainage on the stadium. And we're trying to do some determination on what that impact
is it gonna like wipe the entire field out?
Yes, sir. No, it will just get there
A lot more
quicker.
water.
It'd be roughly the same amount of water, but it will get there quicker, and which means it build up. Feedback that we get, and if we did those three, the two ACOGs and the local on Wentz, we were looking at about 1.7 million of money from the grant and just a little over $1 million of local funds. Feedback we get, it appears those two projects are not going to get funded. So we would drop back to the proposal we talked about, 100% local funding. And the base bid was to just take out the bridge and fill it in and do some outlets adjacent to it to tie in at a later date for stormwater. Alternate number 2 was to come down to the west and tie into the streetscape project where it will be and bring it back over to tie into this major pipe that comes down through here. And then alternate number 3, or alternate number 1, I guess I got backwards. Alternate number 1 was to go by Bob Powell's building where he has the drive-in area that goes down and do some drainage there. And again, that's describing the projects. And then we had an alternate 3 was to do new pavement, sidewalks, street lighting from Bob Powell's west to where the streetscape would end on Division. So that section of road would match the streetscape project. The base bid, we're estimating roughly $900,000. If you do alternate number 1, it would increase it to $993,000. Again, that's going just past Powell's building. And then alternate 2 coming back.
Is that buying Paul's building?
No, buy.
No, because I thought he was in number 1.
Close to Powell's building.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
BY.
So we've got none of these grants, all the grants are dead in the water.
Well, we don't know for sure, but that's the
But we're
feedback
assuming.
we're getting.
Yeah.
And the purpose in going back east to Bob's is to try to relieve the flooding he's got?
Correct.
Okay.
And then alternate alternate number 2 again would tie into, at Harrison and Division, the streetscape project. And that would be 1.1 million of local funds. And that's what we will be, once we know for sure, this will be what we will be bringing back to you to see if you want to just do the base bid or bid out base bid and alternate 1 and 2. And we can bid them all out, and then you all can make a decision once we get the bids as well.
And it's CIP money?
That's where it'll have to come from. And the next project that we talk about, we get roughly $235,000 from a fee for street improvements that's on everybody's water bill. And then we projected taking $200,000 out of the CIP money annually to do street work. That gives us $415,000. Thought process was, $100,000 would go to street work and intersection work that would improve ADA compliance annually. $100,000 would go to street overlay, $35,000 roughly to engineering, and then the $200,000 out of the CIP would be set aside annually to build up money for large projects. We have about $600,000 of that money set aside for this project already, so it would take 2 more years of that, and then we would start building up again for either 19th Street or Sooner Road. So each year we would do some handicap work, we would do a small overlay project, and then we would build up funds so that over a period of time we could do larger projects that wouldn't make sense to do in small pieces.
So why do you think the grants are going south on us?
Traffic numbers, all the grants that ACOG does, it's driven by the amount of traffic you have. And if you take the highest traffic count we have in this area, it doesn't even compete to the traffic counts in Norman, Midwest City, Oklahoma City, Edmond. So we just can't, we did everything we could, even put a roundabout in there, even though we know some people would object it. Just to see if we could get the grant, we put everything in there that would get us points, and we're still going to come up short. We just can't compete with the traffic numbers that larger cities have. And as long as they structure those grants that way, we probably won't get one, unfortunately.
That includes the 5-foot sidewalks, right?
Yep.
And their rationale is, put money where the most traffic, where the most, you know, that's, it's hard to fight that logic.
I was just trying to think
I've
of an
been fighting
alternate
it.
to fix the bridge if there's another way, but
The matching money that we talked about with storm damage, is that coming out of CIP also?
The 20%?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
it'll have to, other than we indicated that the money that we got reimbursed for our barricades and stuff.
Right.
That 50 to 70,000 we will use, because we've already paid that.
Sure.
We'll put it in the fund and use for part of that match. Okay, overlay, and there was 13 various projects approved under the base bid, and then there was an alternate for First Street from Noble to Cleveland, and then the alley between Oak and Nash, and the parking in Mineral Wells, and then the Park Road on the West Road was approved. Kenny, you want to give an update on where we're at on those pages?
We've had our pre-work with both contractors for this. Start date is the 29th. Or, I'm sorry, we had our pre-work on the 29th. Staff is currently working on Prepping all these roads, every bit of the prep work is done in-house. Start date, contractors requested May 1st. Gets them into a little bit better weather. End date will be July 30th as a completion date for these projects. The one alternate may flex a little bit on this time due to the fact that it is part of the Mineral Wells Park project. To keep from holding up other contractors that's putting in sidewalks and
What was the
stuff.
start date again?
Start date is May 1st,
And July 30th?
July 30th.
And then our thoughts are, because we got 600,000 set aside towards the bridge, we're gonna have to come up with another 400,000 that we would probably limit the overlay project in 2020. And one of the areas we'd like to look at is the intersection at First and Springer. There's a spring there, and that intersection needs to be reworked. Of course, that will go to the street committee or a recommendation, but that's one that we're looking at.
What do? Pull that brick up and then replace the brick, or just eliminate it?
What we will probably propose is with that spring there, that's wet all the time. We don't think you can maintain a brick intersection there. And so what we will probably propose is that we come back with a stamped concrete intersection and then have brick go out from the intersection. But we're actually replace this area. We think we'll have a more stable intersection if we, at least in the intersection, do stamped concrete so that it blends in, but it won't be brick. We don't think we can stabilize it with brick.
You'll bring that back to the stop bar, won't you, Kenny?
There's another one
All
that
four
looks
sides.
just like that or worse, but doesn't have the spring.
The other thing that we're also looking at with this intersection is going back both directions from that intersection with some means of French drain as well. And to answer Jim's question, we will take it just around the approach to where it straightens back out into the road itself.
So with the stamped asphalt, visually it'll look fairly blended, right?
Well, it'd be real similar to what they've done on the viaduct, on the sidewalk. It's stamped concrete,
Concrete, yeah, I said asphalt.
and they came back and they painted that's down here.
Could they do a colored concrete rather than a painted? I think it'd wear better driving on it.
Yeah, we'll look at all options. We'll look at the stained concrete, where they put the actual stain in the concrete when it's mixed.
It's mixed.
That makes sense.
Versus
Similar out of
paint.
concrete, you can get the colors already mixed in.
It'll still
before
fade,
you
but it's still
make
look-
it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, you don't have to paint it or jack with
It's
any
all
of
the way
it.
through.
Yeah.
Industrial park, of course, we're just getting started on that. This is just our first rough sketch of a plat. And our ideal is that if we're going to promote this, we're going to have some internal roadways. But we want to plat it in such a way that if you had somebody needed 20 acres, you could put a larger site together. Or you could even put all of these together if you want, and then some smaller sites. It's been my experience that the larger sites you have plat, industries are very hungry for land, and they may need 3 acres, but if you got a site of 9, they'll say, well, we need all 9.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we don't want the sites too big, but we want them where we can configure, where you can put 2 sites together to get a larger, depending on the need of the industry.
What's your little squiggly line on lot 3 about?
It's
line.
Tree line.
Oh, okay.
So we're in the process of this, and we will, of course, go through the planning commission and city council actually do the plat. We have sat down with engineering Tenney, and we already have a survey of the site, and we're making sure we identify that there's no floodplain or wetlands, all the easements across the site. We will do a geotechnical report. We'll probably do 5 samples at different locations. We won't go to the whole site, but we'll give some indications to industries looking at it, what the compaction rate is, what the water table is and stuff. And once they identify the specific site they want, then of course they would do more test bores on that particular site. But it will, 5 will at least give them some idea scattered across there what they're dealing with as far as the land. So we will do that. We will update the phase 1 environmental study. We don't think there will be a need for a phase 2. There is no height restrictions at the airport, and Shalon will be providing us a letter to have in our file if we're asked to document that. Dan's working on the zoning letter. We talked about the subdivision plat. We've not got started yet, but we will start working on subdivision regulations we talked about. Just like if you build a $300,000 brick structure and manicured lawn, you don't want a trailer next to it.
Right.
So we will look at some subdivision regulations for the industrial park. Of course, those will go through the planning commission and to city council for final approval. We're a little bit early to have it appraised because we'll want an appraised value with all of the utilities extension and stuff. And then once we get appraised, we'll work with council to establish an initial asking price. Let's see. We're identifying all of the adjacent utilities and whether they're redundant capacity, and then where they're located. And then we want to, at a minimum, extend the sewer line. Water line's very close, but it needs to be on site, and natural gas to the park. Electric won't be a big deal. We'll have feedback from OG&E on what's available, but probably won't have that extended until we have a user.
Will they do buried electric or overhead?
Probably overhead for an industrial park. I don't know for sure, but
To get to
they could go to a substation and go buried in the substation.
Steve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it.
And I can stop with this one if you
Yeah,
want.
it'll be the last one.
Let's see, you talked about the internal road. There is some site clearing. You saw the tree line. There's not a lot of grading and vegetation, but we want it to be close to shovel ready. So we will do some site work. And then we'll do a marketing piece, but we're a little bit early to do the marketing piece yet. We're just basically talking about the framework of it right now.
So do the covenants that you put on it, are they gonna limit, they'll limit what we can bring in there, obviously?
We'll have to make a choice when we do that. I mean,
That'd be more your wheelhouse,
you can't,
wouldn't it?
you can't be all things.
No.
And so we'll have to make a decision of, what type of, you can do an industrial park that's heavy industry and
Light.
dirty, or you can do a light industrial park. You can do one where you allow people to have equipment scattered all over the property. But if you do that, then those that have well manicured lawns and nice looking buildings, they're not going to want in the subdivision or industrial park that allows people to store crap all over the place. And so we'll have to make a decision what we want to be and what type of industry we want to try to recruit out there. Because you can't be all things.
No.
And I would defer to James. He probably deals with that more than I do. But again, that's some of the discussion we will have to have, is to look at developing those.
Okay, very good. We're gonna adjourn this meeting. There'll be, as the agenda calls for, the continuation downstairs at the Brook time. Our special city workshop is adjourned. Thank you.